I want to be clear about something before this story starts. I am a cartographer. I have been a cartographer for 6 years. I have mapped 43 territories across 5 mountain ranges and 2 river systems and the eastern coastal surveys of the Marin province. I have an excellent record. The Guild gives me the complex work because I am good at it and because I return accurate maps and because in 6 years I have not made a navigational error that resulted in significant professional consequences. This is the story of the one time I did. Or more specifically, this is the story of the 4 days in which a single Tuesday navigational error compounded through a series of individually reasonable decisions into finding myself significantly inside the Greyfen pack territory with a compass that had been behaving oddly since the original mistake, and a map that was increasingly decorative rather than functional. It is also the story of what happened when the Greyfen pack scouts found me, and what happened when the alpha of the Greyfen pack decided, based on what I understand was entirely reasonable intelligence, that a stranger in his territory with map cases and survey notebooks and a damaged compass was almost certainly a spy. I was not a spy. I want to say that now, and I will say it several more times throughout this story, and I need you to believe me each time. I was lost. I was a cartographer who was lost, which is professionally embarrassing in the way that a surgeon with a broken arm is professionally embarrassing. Not evidence of incompetence, just an uncomfortable irony. I had been managing this embarrassment with the practical humor I applied to most situations, and then the scouts found me, and I found myself sitting across a table from the alpha of Greyfen, and I said, "I am not a spy." He said, "That is what a spy would say." I said, "It is also what a lost cartographer would say." He said, "Yes." He said it in the tone of someone who found this distinction unconvincing. We were going to be at this for a while. My name is Sansa. Welcome to Sansa Romance Oracle. This is the story of a cartographer who got lost, a suspicious alpha who would not believe she was not a spy, and the 6-year-old nephew who decided the adults were being ridiculous and said so. It is also a love story, though neither of them saw that coming. This story is completely original and exists only on this channel. Prologue: The Tuesday Error. I want to explain the Tuesday error properly because it has been misrepresented in subsequent accounts, and I would like the record to reflect the actual sequence of events. The Eastern Mountain Pass Survey required me to document the transition points between the upper granite formations and the lower sedimentary sections where the pass opened into the valley approaches. Standard survey work. I had done this type of survey 12 times. On Tuesday morning, I took a bearing from my camp at the eastern ridge using my compass, which was functioning normally at that point, and began the day's survey section. At some point between 8 and 10 in the morning, I cannot be more specific because the relevant section of my field notebook was, as I have mentioned, increasingly decorative by the time it became relevant to the question. My compass developed a deviation, not a catastrophic deviation, a subtle one, 4 to 6 degrees. The kind of deviation that, over a morning's survey work across significant terrain, did not announce itself as a problem and was only apparent in retrospect when the afternoon landmarks did not match the expected positions. I noticed the landmark discrepancy at approximately 3 in the afternoon. I corrected for it. I corrected for it in the wrong direction. By the time I camped on Tuesday evening, I was not where I thought I was. This happens. Not often, not to me specifically, before this. But it happens. What made Tuesday's error compound into the next 4 days was the fog. The Eastern Mountain Range generates fog in the morning hours during the autumn surveys, and on Wednesday morning the fog was significant, and I made 3 directional decisions in the fog that I believed were corrections toward the Eastern Pass, and were not. By Wednesday evening I was, by my later calculations, approximately 11 miles inside the Greyfen territory boundary. By Thursday I had compounded this further because I did not yet know it was a boundary I was inside. By Friday morning I had a map that was wrong, a compass that was unreliable, a position I could not accurately determine, and the specific quiet calm of a professional who has understood that the situation is worse than she thought and has decided that panic is not on the options list. I was making a fire and reviewing my field notebooks to try to reconstruct the sequence of errors when the scouts found me. 3 of them. Very large, with the expressions of people who had been expecting to find something concerning and had found it. I looked at them. I said, "I am going to save us some time. I am not a spy. I am a cartographer who has been navigating with a compromised compass for 4 days, and I am not entirely certain where I am. I would be grateful for assistance returning to the Eastern Pass. The largest scout said, "You will need to come with us." I said, "Yes." That was essentially what I just asked for. He did not find this as clarifying as I had intended. We left for the compound. I brought my map cases. I had a feeling I was going to need to demonstrate their contents. I was correct about that. Chapter 1, the Alpha's Table. The compound was well organized. I noticed this the way I noticed everything, as information that was accurate and potentially useful. Clean paths, efficient building placement, the specific quality of organization that came from someone who thought about how spaces worked rather than just inhabiting them. I was brought to the main hall. I was sat at a table. I was told to wait. I waited. I had been waiting for approximately 10 minutes, using the time to reconstruct the final sections of my survey notes from memory when the Alpha came in. He was taller than the doorframe made him look, which the doorframe had not prepared me for. Dark hair, controlled expression, the bearing of someone who had been in charge of things for long enough that authority was simply how he occupied space. He sat across from me. He said, "You were found in my territory." I said, "Yes. I was in the process of explaining to your scouts that," he said, "with map cases and survey equipment." I said, "I am a cartographer." "Yes," he said, "and you claim to have wandered in by accident." I said, "I did not wander. I navigated incorrectly due to a compass deviation. There is a difference." He looked at the map case on the table between us. He said, "May I?" I said, "Please. The evidence is in there." He opened the case. He looked at the maps. He looked at the notes. He looked at the compass deviation log I had started keeping on Wednesday morning when I first suspected the instrument. He looked at me. He said, "You documented the compass deviation." I said, "I document everything. I am a cartographer," he said. "And the Tuesday bearing," I said, "is in the notebook. 3rd page. I have reconstructed the most likely error sequence from the landmark discrepancies." He looked at the notebook. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "These maps are of the Eastern Pass." I said, "Yes. That is the survey I was commissioned for." He said, "They do not include Greyfen territory." I said, "No, because I was not supposed to be in Greyfen territory. I was supposed to be in the Eastern Pass," he said. "And yet," I said, "and yet, yes." He looked at me with the eyes of someone assessing a situation and not arriving at a conclusion they were comfortable with. He said, "I have had 3 intelligence operations in my territory in the past 6 months." I said, "I understand why that makes this situation look concerning." He said, "Yes." I said, "However, I would like to point out that a spy collecting intelligence on Greyfen territory would not be doing so with Guild registered survey equipment. A letter of commission from the Mapmakers Guild, and a field notebook that documents in considerable detail the specific navigational errors that led to the accidental incursion." He said, "A very good spy might." I said, "A very good spy would also not be sitting at your table explaining the compass deviation log to you. A very good spy would have a cover story. This is not a cover story. This is my actual notes." He looked at the notes. He looked at me. His jaw did a thing. I clocked this. The jaw thing. It was the thing his jaw did when he was managing something he did not have a ready conclusion for. I was going to see this jaw thing a great many times, and I was going to document it in my head, because documentation was what I did. He said, "You will remain at the compound while we verify your guild registration." I said, "That is entirely reasonable. How long will verification take?" He said, 2 to 3 days. I said I would like to continue my field notes while I wait. The survey section I missed due to the incursion will need to be rescheduled, and I want the error documentation to be complete. He said, "You want to make notes about getting lost?" I said, "I want to make notes about the navigational error and its causes so that my report to the guild is accurate." "Yes," he said, "you are going to report this to the guild." I said, "Of course. It is a significant navigational error with documented consequences. The guild uses these cases for training." He looked at me. He said, "You are going to use your own mistake as a teaching case." I said, "That is standard guild practice." He said, "Most people would not volunteer a record of their own errors." I said, "Most people find errors embarrassing. I find them informative." He paused. "They are also embarrassing, but primarily informative." His jaw did the thing again. "I documented it," he said. "You will be shown to a room. Your equipment will be returned once verification is complete." I said I would like the notebooks in the meantime. The equipment can wait. He said, why the notebooks? I said, because I am a cartographer and not having something to document things and makes me anxious. He looked at me for a long moment. He said, you will have the notebooks. He stood. He said, I am Alpha Corran Greyfen. I said, Willa Fen, cartographer, not a spy. He said, so you have said. He left. I sat at the table. I got my notebooks back within the hour. I started documenting. Chapter 2 Kit. I met Kit on the second morning. I had been shown to a room that was comfortable and had a window that faced east and was clean and warm and had a small shelf of books that I had gone through by midnight because I had nothing else to do. I was in the east-facing window at dawn watching the light come up over the mountain when the door opened. I had not knocked. The door simply opened, and a small person came in with the specific purposefulness of someone who had decided to come and had not consulted anyone about it. He stopped when he saw me in the window. He said, you are the lost cartographer. I said, yes. He said, I am Kit. I said, Willa. He said, I know. He came further into the room with the focused assessment of someone taking inventory. Are you actually lost? I said, I was actually lost. I am now in your compound, which is a known location. He said, but you were lost before. I said, yes, for 4 days. He said, that is a long time. I said, it is longer than I have ever been lost before. He said, was it scary? I said, a little on Thursday. By Friday, I had accepted the situation and was focusing on solving it. He said, how? I said, by retracing my steps in the field notebook and working out where the errors started. He said, did you figure it out? I said, yes. The Tuesday bearing was off by 5 degrees. I have documented the full error sequence. He looked at the notebooks on the shelf. He said, can I see? I said, the documentation of navigational errors. He said, I want to see what it looks like when you get lost. I considered this. I opened the notebook to the Tuesday section. I showed him the bearing, the notes, the point where the landmark discrepancy appeared in the afternoon. He looked at it with the focused attention of someone taking it seriously. He said, you wrote all of this while you were lost. I said, that is when most of it was written, yes. He said, why? I said, because if you write things down as they happen, you have a better record afterward. And because writing helps me think. He said, me too. I said, you write things down. He said, I draw them. He paused. I cannot write much yet, but I draw what I see so I remember it. I said, that is essentially the same thing. He said, Uncle Corran says drawing is not work. I said, your Uncle Corran is wrong about that. He looked at me. He said, he is not usually wrong about things. I said, he is wrong about this specific thing. Drawing is how cartographers worked for most of history before the notation systems were formalized. Maps are drawings with added information. The drawing comes first. He thought about this. He said, can I show you my drawings? I said, I would like that very much. He went to get them. He came back with a collection of papers that were clearly his and clearly regular. Not the occasionally produced art of a child who drew sometimes, but the working collection of a child who drew constantly with the consistent purpose of someone who had a project. He had been drawing the compound, every building, the paths, the gate, the mountain visible from the northern wall, the garden, the horses. He had been drawing them in sequence over time, so you could see the changes. The autumn coming into the garden, the morning light angle shifting. I looked at all of them. He watched me look. I said, these are good. He said, Uncle Corran says. I said, your uncle is not a cartographer and I am. These are good. You have documented the compound over time in a way that creates a record of change. That is cartography. It is just cartography of a place you know rather than a place you are discovering. He said, is there a difference? I said, the techniques are the same. The emotional relationship to the subject is different. Mapping an unknown place is about discovery. Mapping a known place is about, I paused, about love, in a way. You keep drawing it because it matters to you. He looked at his drawings. He said, quietly, I started drawing after Mama and Papa died. I said, when was that? He said, a year ago. I said, I am sorry. He said, Uncle Corran says drawing is not work, but I think it was work. It was how I kept track of things staying the same when I was afraid they would change. I looked at the drawings. I said, it is absolutely work. The most important kind. He looked at me. You were right to do it. He said, you think so? I said, I know so. He looked at the drawings. He said, I am going to show you the rest of the compound. Since you are stuck here. I said, I am not stuck. I am being verified. He said, that is the same as stuck. I said, it is marginally more voluntary. He said, come on. He led me out of the room. I followed a 6-year-old through the compound of the Alpha who thought I was a spy, and I thought about maps as love, and I thought about a child who drew the same buildings over and over to keep track of things staying the same. I thought about documentation as survival. I thought it was one of the truest things I had heard in a long time. Chapter 3, the second interview. He called me back to the table on the second afternoon. I had spent the morning with Kit, who had given me a comprehensive tour of the compound with the specific detail of someone who had been drawing it for a year and therefore knew things about it that most of the adult inhabitants did not. The angle the morning light hit the northern storage wall, the way the gate shadow fell in the late afternoon, the tree in the east corner that had a hollow in the lower trunk where something small had lived until the autumn. I had found the tour genuinely useful. Kit had found my finding it useful genuinely satisfying. I came to the hall and sat across from Corran again. He had a document this time. He had been making notes. He said, I contacted the Mapmakers Guild. I said, and? He said, your registration is confirmed. Your commission for the Eastern Pass survey is confirmed. I said, good. He said, you have been with the guild for 6 years. I said, yes. He said, 43 surveys completed without incident. I said, until Tuesday, yes. He said, the guild describes your record as exceptional. I said, I am good at my work. He said, and yet. I said, and yet, Tuesday, yes? The compass deviation was an equipment failure. It is in my field notes. He said, the guild also mentioned that you have previously identified survey equipment failures before they became significant. I said, twice yes. The deviation this time was subtler. He said, a 5-degree deviation is subtle. I said, over the first hour. By the time it became apparent in the landmark positions, I had covered enough terrain for the compounding to be significant. Yes. He was quiet. He looked at his notes. He said, I owe you an adjustment. I said, a what? He said, an adjustment. He said it carefully, like a man reading from a foreign language document. I have been operating on the assumption that your presence in my territory was deliberate. I said, I see. He said, the evidence does not support that assumption. I said, no, it does not. He said, the compass deviation is documented and consistent with the described error. The survey notes are internally consistent and match guild records. The error sequence you have described is plausible and corroborated. I said, yes. He said, you are not a spy. I said, I have been saying this since Friday. He said, yes. His jaw did the thing. I documented it internally. I said, I appreciate the acknowledgement. I would like my equipment returned and a route confirmed to the Eastern Pass. He said, of course. We can have someone escort you to the pass boundary tomorrow morning. I said, that would be sufficient, yes. He said, we will also need a formal record of the incursion for our territorial records. I said, I will provide a full written account. I was planning to do so anyway for the guild file. He said, good. He looked at his notes. He said, you told Kit that drawing was cartography. I looked at him. He said, he told me at dinner last night, at some length. I said, it is accurate. The notation systems developed from the drawing traditions. He said, he has been drawing the compound for a year. I said, I know. He showed me. They are excellent records. He said, I told him drawing was not work. I said, you were wrong. He said, I am rarely wrong. I said, you were wrong about me being a spy and wrong about drawing not being work. That is 2 in 2 days. His jaw did the significant version of the thing. I documented it with particular attention. He said, you are very direct. I said, I am a cartographer. Accuracy is the whole point. He said, most people are not direct with me. I said, most people are probably afraid of you. I am just annoyed at having been held for 2 days on an incorrect assumption. He said, you do not seem annoyed. I said, I am managing it with professional composure. He said, and when you are not managing it, I said, quite annoyed. He looked at me. I looked back. He said, you leave tomorrow morning. I said, yes. He said, the escort will leave at dawn. I said, I am always up before dawn. He said, good. He stood. He said, I apologize for the incorrect assumption. I said, accepted. You had reasonable grounds. He said, that is generous. I said, it is accurate. 3 spy attempts in 6 months is reasonable grounds for caution. You were wrong about me specifically. The caution was reasonable. He looked at me. He said, you are an unusual person. I said, I have been told that. I think it means I am direct. He said it means more than that. He said it quietly, as though it was not entirely meant for me. He left. I sat at the table. I thought about what he had said. I made a note. I was leaving in the morning. I had my equipment back. I had a route to the Eastern Pass. Everything was resolved. I thought about a jaw doing a thing. I thought about a child drawing the same buildings over and over. I thought about mapping as love. I was leaving in the morning. I was going to be very efficient about the leaving. 2 Chapter 4 Bryn found me that evening. She came to the room with an informal quality that told me she was the second. The person who moved through the compound on their own terms rather than the compound's terms. She sat in the chair without being invited and looked at me with the look of someone who had been watching a situation develop and had made her assessments. She said, "So?" I said, "I am leaving tomorrow." She said, "Are you?" I said, "Alpha Corran confirmed it this morning. Escort to the pass at dawn." She said, "He confirmed it." I said, "Yes." She said, Kit cried. I looked at her. She said, "At dinner, when Corran told him you were leaving tomorrow," quietly. "The way he does things he does not want to make into a production." "But he cried." I said, "He is 6. She said, "He has not cried since he arrived here a year ago. Not when his parents were mentioned. Not when the anniversary came. He cried about you leaving tomorrow." I said, "I was here for 2 days." She said, "Yes." She looked at the window. She said, "He showed you his drawings." I said, "Yes." She said, "He has not shown those to anyone, including Corran." I said, "Oh." She said, "Oh is right." I said, "He trusted me because I was a stranger. Sometimes it is easier with strangers." She said, "I think it was because you told him they were work." I said, "They are work." She said, "Corran told him they were not." I said, "Corran was wrong." She said, "He was." She said it simply, "He has been wrong about a few things this week." I said, "He acknowledged the error about the spy assumption." She said, "He acknowledged it to you." I said, "This afternoon." She said, "Corran does not usually acknowledge errors." I said, "He was very specific about it. He called it an adjustment." She looked at me. She said, "He called it an adjustment." I said, "Yes, his word." She said, "He has not made an adjustment to anything since I have known him." She paused. "That is 7 years." I looked at the window. She said, "Can I ask you something directly?" I said, "Yes." She said, "What do you think of him?" I said, "He is intelligent and organized and wrong about 2 things. He runs this compound well." She said, "That is an assessment." I said, "It is what I observed." She said, "What did you feel?" I said, "Bryn." She said, "I am asking." I said, "I am leaving tomorrow." She said, "I know." I said, "We have spoken twice. He thought I was a spy for most of it." She said, "Yes." I said, "He is leaving tomorrow after being wrong about me for 2 days. That is not a foundation for." She said, "You are documenting him." I said, "What?" She said, "You mentioned his jaw 3 times in conversation with Kit this afternoon. Kit told me at dinner." I said, "I do not." She said, "You said Uncle Corran does the jaw thing," and Kit said, "Yes, I know." And you said, "I have noticed that," and Kit said it means he is thinking about something he does not have an answer for. I looked at the wall. She said, "You are a cartographer." I said, "Yes." She said, "You document everything you find interesting." I said, "Yes." She said, "You have been documenting him." I said, "I noticed things." "It does not mean." She said, "Willa." I said, "Yes." She said, "The Eastern Pass survey has 7 more sections." I said, "Yes, I have to reroute around the mist section." She said, "Some of those sections are adjacent to the Greyfen boundary." I said, "Geographically, yes." She said, "You would need to coordinate with Greyfen territory for the boundary adjacent sections. Standard survey protocol." I said, "That is true." She said, "The coordination would typically happen through the Alpha's office." I said, "Bryn." She said, "I am just describing the survey protocol." I said, "You are constructing an argument for why I would have reason to come back." She said, "I am describing the survey protocol." She stood. She said, "Kit is going to come to your room in the morning before you leave." I said, "All right." She said, "He has something to give you." I said, "All right." She walked to the door. She said, without turning around, "The jaw thing means he is thinking about something he does not want to think about but cannot stop." She left. I sat in the room. I thought about boundary adjacent survey sections. I thought about coordination through the Alpha's office. I thought about a jaw doing a thing. I got out my notebook. I was going to document this efficiently, and then I was going to leave in the morning, and I was going to be very practical about all of it. I made notes until the candle burned down. I was not very practical about any of it. 2 Chapter 5, the morning, Kit arrived before dawn. He came quietly, which was not his standard approach, and he stood in the doorway with the expression he used for things he was managing. He had a folded paper in his hand. He said, "This is for you." I said, "What is it?" He said, "I drew the compound last night, so you have it." I opened the paper. He had drawn it in the way he drew everything, with the detail of someone who paid attention. The main hall, the storage buildings, the east corner tree, the northern wall with the mountain behind it. In the corner, small, he had written 2 words, not his best writing, 6 years old, limited practice, but legible, "Come back." I looked at the drawing. I looked at him. I said, "Kit," he said, "you told me drawing is how you document things that matter." I said, "Yes." He said, "I want this to be documented." I breathed. I said, "I have 7 more survey sections. Some of them are boundary, adjacent." He said, "I know." "Bryn told me last night." I said, "She told you." He said, "She said the protocol required coordination with the Alpha's office." I said, "That is accurate." He said, "So you will come back." I said, "For the boundary sections, protocol requires." He said, "You will come back." He said it the way he said most things. As fact, as the thing that was simply true. I folded the drawing carefully. I put it in my map case. I said, "I will come back for the boundary sections." He said, "Good." He came and sat beside me on the edge of the bed. He said, "Are you going to tell Uncle Corran?" I said, "That I am coming back for the boundary sections." He said, "That you noticed things about him." I said, "How do you know I noticed things about him?" He said, "Because you are a cartographer. You told me. You document everything you find interesting." I said, "Kit." He said, "Yes." I said, "I am leaving this morning and I am coming back for the boundary sections in approximately 3 weeks, and between now and then I am going to complete the Eastern Pass sections and organize my notes and be very professional about everything." He said, "And then?" I said, "And then I will come back for the boundary sections." He said, "And you will notice more things." I said, "Possibly." He said, "And he will do the jaw thing." I said, "Possibly." He said, "And eventually one of you will say the thing you are both not saying." I said, "You are 6 years old." He said, "I know." He stood. He said, "Uncle Corran is at the gate." I said, "What?" He said, "He is going to take you to the pass himself." He said he needed to confirm the boundary markers were correctly flagged on the official charts. I said, "He is escorting me himself." He said, "Yes." I said, "That is the Alpha's function." He said, "It is not usually the Alpha's function." He paused. He told Bryn he needed to verify the charts. Bryn said, "Of course." I said, "What did Bryn's face do when she said of course?" He said, "She smiled. The kind of smile she does when she does not want to be smiling." I picked up my map case. I said, "I am going to leave now." He said, "Come back soon." I said, 3 weeks. "For the boundary sections." He said, "Come back sooner." I looked at him. He looked at me. He said, "There is a lot of compound still to show you." I said, "I have seen most of it." He said, "You have not seen it in winter light. The shadows are different." I said, "Kit." He said, "Yes?" I said, "I will come back as soon as the survey allows." He said, "All right." I went to the gate. Corran was there. He had his horse and a second horse for me, and he was looking at the mountain with the expression of a man who had a legitimate professional reason for being here and was aware that this was not the whole truth of it. He said, "The boundary markers need to be confirmed." I said, "Of course." He said, "I will escort you to the pass directly." I said, "Thank you." We rode out. We rode in the specific quiet of 2 people who had things to say and were not saying them and were both aware of not saying them. At the pass boundary, he confirmed the markers. He showed me the relevant chart annotations. We sat on our horses at the Eastern Pass boundary in the morning light, and I had my map case and my notebooks and 3 weeks of survey work ahead of me. He said, "The boundary, adjacent sections will require coordination." I said, "I know. I will contact the office when I reach those sections." He said, "It is usually handled through correspondence." I said, "Yes." He said, "I can manage the coordination directly if the correspondence is sent to me." I said, "That is more efficient." He said, "Yes." He was looking at the mountain. I was looking at the mountain. He said, "Willa." I said, "Yes." He said, "I was wrong about you from the beginning." I said, "You had reasonable grounds." He said, "That is the second time you have said that." I said, "It is the second time it has been relevant." He said, "Most people would be less generous about 2 days of being incorrectly held as a suspect." I said, "I was provided with comfortable accommodations, my notebooks, and access to the most thorough tour guide I have ever encountered. I have had worse surveys." He almost smiled. I documented it. He said, I will expect the coordination correspondence in 3 weeks. I said, 3 weeks. He said, Kit will be disappointed by 3 weeks. I said, I know. He said, quietly, so will I. I looked at him. He looked at me. He said, that is more than I intended to say. I said, it is accurate though. He said, yes. I said, 3 weeks. He said, 3 weeks. I rode into the eastern pass. I did not look back until the turn. I looked back at the turn. He was still at the boundary. He was watching me go. His jaw was doing the thing. I documented it. I wrote on, 2 chapter 6, 3 weeks and 2 days. I came back in 3 weeks and 2 days. The 2 extra days were because I needed to complete the eastern pass sections. Before the boundary, adjacent coordination required my presence, and I was going to be professional about the sequencing. I was also very fast on the eastern pass sections. I was back at the Greyfen boundary 2 days earlier than I had told Kit, and approximately 10 days earlier than the pace my previous surveys would have suggested. I sent the coordination correspondence to Corran directly, as he had requested. His response arrived the same day I sent it. This was very fast. Survey coordination correspondence typically took 3 to 5 days. The response confirmed the boundary access and included detailed notes on the relevant chart annotations and was signed by Corran rather than his office, which was not standard. I read it 3 times. I sent a reply. His reply to my reply arrived the next morning. We corresponded for 4 days before I arrived at the boundary. The correspondence was entirely professional. It was also, and I documented this in the private section of my field notebook, that I was keeping separate from the guild submission notebook, the most engaging professional correspondence I had received in 6 years of survey work. He asked questions about the Eastern Pass documentation that were specific and intelligent. He had read the preliminary survey data I had included with the coordination request and had observations about the geological transition zones that were accurate and interesting. I asked questions about the Greyfen boundary markers and their historical placement, and he provided answers that went significantly beyond what was required for survey coordination and that I found genuinely useful, and not only for the survey. I arrived at the boundary on a Friday morning. He was there, not with a horse this time, on foot, at the boundary marker, with a chart and the expression of a man who had a professional reason for being here. He said, the boundary adjacent sections start north of marker 7. I said, I know. Your correspondence was very thorough. He said, I wanted to be helpful. I said, you were. We looked at each other. He said, Kit wants to show you the winter light. I said, I noticed in your second letter that the north wall shadows shift in early winter. He said, you read my letters very carefully. I said, I am a cartographer. I read everything carefully. He said, you replied very quickly. I said, I had the information ready. He said, you replied at 10 in the evening to my letter that arrived at noon. I said, I work late. His jaw did the thing. I said, hello, Corran. He said, hello, Willa. He said it differently from the first time. We went to look at marker 7, 2 chapter 7, what the boundary sections required. The boundary adjacent sections required 3 weeks. They required 3 weeks because the survey was thorough and the terrain was complex, and because when Kit showed me the winter shadows on the north wall on the second day of the survey, and I said, I see what you mean. The angle is completely different. He said, I told you, and looked so satisfied that I stayed to document it properly, which took longer than expected. They also required 3 weeks because of the evenings. The survey access allowed for compound accommodations during the boundary work. Standard protocol for extended surveys. And the evenings were when the survey equipment was stored and the field notebooks were organized and dinner was in the main hall, and after dinner there was a fire in the common room and Corran was usually there. We talked. Not about the survey. We talked about everything else. He told me about the pack, the history of the Greyfen territory, the 3 spy attempts that had preceded my arrival and what they had cost. He told me this directly, without performing the weight of it or minimizing it, simply as what had happened and what he had understood from it. I told him about the guild, about the 43 surveys, about the specific satisfaction of mapping a place accurately and knowing that the document you produced was going to be used and trusted, about the Tuesday compass deviation and what I had learned from it. He said, once, on the 7th evening, you are not embarrassed about being wrong. I said, I am slightly embarrassed about being wrong. I am more interested in what being wrong tells me, he said. That is different from most people. I said, most people have more to protect than I do. I have my accuracy record and my notebooks. If my accuracy record includes a documented error, it is a better record than one where the error was hidden. He said, that is a specific philosophy. I said, it is the only one that makes sense for the work. He said, does it apply to things that are not the work? I looked at the fire. I said, I try. He said, you told Kit he was right about the drawings. You told me I was wrong about you twice. I said, both were accurate. He said, most people would have been gracious about the error. You were accurate. I said, gracious would have meant pretending you were not as wrong as you were. He said, and accuracy meant, I said, saying you were wrong twice specifically and explaining why he was quiet. He said, no one has done that before. I said, told you specifically what you were wrong about. He said, without, he stopped. I said, without managing it. He said, yes. I said, you have the same problem, Corran. He said, what problem? I said, everyone around you is managing the truth rather than saying it. He looked at me. Because you are the alpha and you are large and controlled and in charge of things. So people give you the managed version, he said. And you do not. I said, I am a cartographer. The managed version is not useful to me. He said, it is useful to me, apparently. I said, is it? He said, nothing. I said, you told Kit drawing was not work. He said, I was wrong. I said, what else have you told him that was the managed version? He looked at the fire. He said, he does not sleep well. Some nights, I hear him. I have been telling him it will get better. I said, does he believe you? He said, I do not think so. I said, what would the unmanaged version be? He said, I do not know. He paused. That I hear him. That I am there. He paused again. That I am sad about his parents too. I said, have you told him that? He said, I did not think it would help. I said, it would help. He said, how do you know? I said, because he has been drawing the same buildings for a year to keep track of things staying the same. He is afraid things will change. He said it to me. He looked at me. He needs to know that you are not going to change. That you are sad too. That it is shared. He was very still. He said, I thought it would add to his weight if he knew I was sad. I said, he already knows you are sad. He draws the compound to track whether things stay the same. He is tracking you. He said, he is tracking me. I said, every morning. The north wall light, the gate, your study window. He has been tracking whether you are still there. He breathed. He said, I had not understood that. I said, I know. He looked at the fire. He said, Willa. I said, yes. He said, thank you. I said, for what? He said, for the unmanaged version. I said, it is the only version I have. He said, I know. He looked at me. He said, that is one of the things I have been thinking about. I said, what things? He said, one of several things. His jaw did the thing. I said, tell me the several things. He looked at the fire. He said, later. I said, when later? He said, when I have worked out how to say them without it coming out managed. I looked at him. He looked at the fire. I said, I will be here. He said, I know, I will be here. I said it the way Ren had said I am here in story 13, and I did not know I was saying it the same way. But it landed the same way. He heard it the same way. He did not say anything. But his jaw did not do the thing, which was, I had learned over 3 weeks, the jaw's version of settled. I documented it. I looked at the fire. We sat with the fire in the evening and neither of us said the several things yet. But they were there. We both knew they were there. We were going to get to them. Chapter 8, What He Told Kit. He told Kit on a Sunday morning. I know this because Kit told me on Sunday afternoon with the specific relief of a child who has been carrying something and has put it down. He came to the survey station where I was organizing the week's documentation and sat in the chair across from my table with the expression of someone who had experienced something significant. I said, what happened? He said, Uncle Corran talked to me. I said, about what? He said, about Mama and Papa. I waited. He said he told me he was sad too. He said it in the morning. He said he heard me at night sometimes, and he was sorry he had not said sooner that he was sad too. I said, how did that feel? He said, like something that had been tight got less tight. He said it the way he said precise things, with the specificity of someone who had found the right words after looking for them. He said it was shared. That is the word he used. He said, I want you to know it is shared. I looked at my notebooks. I said, that is the right thing to say. Kit said yes. He said you told him. I said I may have suggested it. He said you told him I was tracking him. In the drawings. He looked at his hands. He said he had not understood that and he was sorry. I said, "Was the sorry helpful?" Kit said, "Yes." He paused, because he did not have to say it. He could have just changed the thing without saying the sorry. But he said the sorry too. I said, "That is the difference between managed and real." He said, "What?" I said, "The managed version fixes the thing without acknowledging what the thing was. The real version does both." He thought about this. He said, "You taught him that." I said, "He already knew it. He just needed to find it." He said, "You helped him find it." I said, "Maybe." Kit looked at me. He said, "Willa." I said, "Yes." He said, "Are you going to stay?" I said, "The boundary sections have 2 more weeks." He said, "After the boundary sections." I said, "Kit." He said, "You said you would come back for the boundary sections. You came back in 3 weeks and 2 days." He paused. "That was faster than 3 weeks." I said, "I finished the Eastern Pass sections early." He said, "You worked faster." I said, "The Eastern Pass sections were straightforward." He said, "You worked faster because you wanted to come back sooner." I said, "That is a complicated interpretation of survey pacing." He said, "No, it is not." He said it the way he said most things. As fact, I said, "Kit, I have a guild survey contract. The survey has sections to complete. I cannot simply." He said, "The guild surveys the mountain passes." He looked at me. "The Greyfen territory has mountain passes." I said, "The Greyfen territory is not in my current commission." He said, "Could it be?" I looked at the window. I thought about boundary-adjacent sections and protocol correspondence and evenings at a fire and several things that had not been said yet. I said I would need to submit a survey extension request. He said, "Would the guild approve it?" I said, "Probably. The Greyfen mountain approaches are under-documented." He said, "So you could stay." I said, "I could request the extension." He said, "Will you?" I looked at him. He looked at me. He said, "The winter light changes every 2 weeks. I am not finished documenting it." I said, "You are not finished documenting it." He said, "No. And you said mapping a known place is love. I want to keep doing the work." I looked at the drawing he had given me, which was in my map case. "Come back." I said, "I will request the extension." He said, "Today." I said, "This evening." He said, "Before dinner?" I said, "Kit." He said, "Yes." I said, "Before dinner." He smiled. It was the real smile, the full version, the one he did not do often enough. He said, "I am going to go tell Uncle Corran." I said, "I have not submitted the request yet." He said, "I know." He paused. "I am going to tell him you are thinking about it." He left. I sat in the survey station. I opened my notebook. I wrote the extension request. I submitted it before dinner. To Chapter 9, the several things he came to the survey station that evening. Not after dinner, before. Which was not when he usually came. He knocked. I opened the door. He said, "Kit told me." I said, "I know. He told me he was going to tell you." He said, "You submitted the extension." I said, "This afternoon." He said, "The guild approved it." I said, "They responded very quickly." He said, "I may have sent a letter to the guild master 3 days ago recommending an extension of the survey commission." I looked at him. He said, "The Greyfen mountain approaches are under-documented." I noted this in my correspondence with the guild. I indicated the pack's support for an extended survey. I said, "You wrote to the guild master?" He said, 3 days ago. I said, "Before I submitted the request?" He said, "Yes." I said, "You were expecting me to submit it?" He said, "I was hoping." I said, "Corran." He said, "Yes." I said, "That is the several things, isn't it?" He said, "Part of them." He came in. He sat down. He said, "I have been trying to find the unmanaged version since I told you I would." I said, "I know. I have been waiting." He said, "You have been patient." I said, "I have been documenting the jaw thing while I waited." He said, "I know." I said, "You know." He said, "Bryn told me you had been documenting it." She found it very funny. I looked at the wall. He almost laughed. He said, "The several things." I said, "Yes." He said, "The first thing is that I have been wrong more in the past 5 weeks than in the previous 5 years, and I have not found it as uncomfortable as I expected." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because being wrong about things that matter means you are paying attention to things that matter." He paused. "I was not paying attention before you arrived." I said, "To what?" He said, "To Kit. To whether the things I was saying were managed. To the difference between functioning and being present." I said, "Those are significant things." He said, "Yes." He said, "The second thing." I waited. He said, "I wrote to the guild master because I did not want you to leave in 2 weeks." I said, "The survey extension," he said, "is real. I meant what I said about the approaches. But that is not why I wrote the letter." I said, "Why did you write it?" He said, because the evenings at the fire are the best part of my days for the first time in longer than I can measure, and I was not ready for them to end in 2 weeks. I looked at him. He looked at me. He said, "The third thing?" I said, "Yes." He said, "You told me you document everything you find interesting." I said, "Yes." He said, "You have been documenting me for 5 weeks." I said, "I have been observing you." "Yes." He said, "What have you observed?" I said, "A man who is very good at most things and has difficulty with the ones he has not practiced. Who tells his nephew the managed version because he thinks it will protect him. Who writes to the guild master 3 days before the survey extension is submitted because he is hoping but not certain." He looked at me. Who does the jaw thing when he is thinking about something he cannot stop thinking about? He said, "What am I thinking about?" I said, "The several things." He said, "The fourth thing." I said, "Is there a fourth?" He said, "Yes." He reached across the table. He put his hand over mine. He said, "I have been thinking about asking you something since the second day, when you told Kit his drawings were work and he showed you all of them." I said, "What have you been thinking about asking?" He said, "Whether you would consider making this a base of operations for the extended survey, rather than returning to the guild settlement between sections." I said, "That is a practical question." He said, "It is one of the practical questions." I said, "What are the others?" He said, "Whether you would consider staying past the extended survey." I said, "In what capacity?" He said, "In whatever capacity felt right to you." I said, "That is very open-ended for someone who manages everything precisely." He said, "I am practicing the unmanaged version." I looked at him. He looked at me. He said, "Willa." I said, "Yes." He said, "I have been wrong about several things and I am trying to be less wrong." He held my gaze. "I do not want to be wrong about this." I said, "About what?" He said, "About whether this is what I think it is." I said, "What do you think it is?" He said, "Something that has been true since approximately the 3rd evening at the fire." He paused. "When you told me about the 43 surveys and what accuracy meant to you, and I thought, I want to hear everything this person knows." I breathed. I said, "I documented that evening." He said, "I know." I said, "I wrote more than usual." He said, "I know." I said, "How do you know?" He said, "Because I could see your light from my study window until 2 in the morning, and that was later than usual." I said, "You notice what time my light went out?" He said, "Every night." I said, "Corran." He said, "Yes." I said, "I have been precise about everything in my life for 6 years." He said, "I know." I said, "I came back 2 days early." He said, "I know." I said, "That is not precise." He said, "No." I said, "I submitted the extension within an hour of deciding I was going to." He said, "Yes." I said, "That is not methodical." He said, "No." I said, "I have been documenting you extensively." He said, "Yes." I said, "That is not entirely professional." He said, "No." I looked at our joined hands. I said, "I think the several things are the same several things." He said, "Yes." I said, "You are going to have to say them." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because I am a cartographer. I need the notation to be accurate." He said, "You need me to say it." I said, "I need you to say it." He said, "The several things are that I do not want you to leave, and I have not wanted anything with this specific a shape in a long time, and you are the most precise and the most surprising person I have ever met in the same moment, and I would like..." He paused. "I would like to find out what this is." He said it without the managed version. "Fully?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Yes." I said, "To finding out," he said, "to all of it." I said, "I am going to submit extensions for as long as the guild allows." He said, "The guild will allow as long as I keep identifying under-documented approaches." I said, "Is there an unlimited supply of under-documented approaches?" He said, "In my territory." "Yes." I looked at him. He looked at me. I said, "Then I am going to be here for a while." He said, "I know." He almost smiled. I documented it. I was never going to stop documenting it. I did not tell him this. He probably already knew. Chapter 10, what Kit said. He came to find us. He did not knock. He opened the door the way he had opened the door on the first morning and stood in the doorway and looked at us at the table with our hands and the expression of 2 people who had said the several things. He looked at this. He assessed it. He said finally. He said it with the satisfaction of someone who had been right about this from a very early point and was collecting on it. He said to Corran, "She is staying." Corran said, "She submitted the extension." Kit said, "For how long?" Corran said, "For as long as the guild approves." Kit said, "And after?" Corran said, Kit. Kit said, "I am asking." Corran said, "That is what we are finding out." Kit looked at me. He said, "Are you going to stay?" I said, "I have submitted the extension." He said, "That is a professional answer." I said, "I am a professional." He said, "What is the real answer?" I looked at the map case. I looked at the drawing he had given me. "Come back." I said, "I came back in 3 weeks and 2 days." He said, "Yes." I said, "I worked faster on the Eastern Pass sections." He said, "I know." I said, "I documented the jaw thing extensively." He said, "I know." Bryn told me. I said, "Kit, I am going to stay as long as the survey allows, and I am going to request extensions." And I stopped. He waited. I said, "I would like to see the spring light." He said, "The shadows are different again in spring." I said, "You mentioned." He said, "And summer. The mountain has different light in every season." I said, "Then I am staying for the light documentation." He said, "How many seasons?" I said, "All of them." He said, "All of them." I said, "That is my professional assessment." He said, "And the other assessment?" I said, "Also all of them." He nodded. He was satisfied. He said, "I am going to go tell Bryn." Corran said, "Kit." Kit said, "She has been waiting." He left. From the corridor, within 30 seconds, Kit's voice. Clear and certain she is staying for all the seasons. Then Bryn's voice, lower but audible, "I know. I have been knowing for 3 weeks." Then Kit's voice, "I knew first." Then nothing. Then, further away, Kit's voice again. "Apparently to someone else, she is staying." He said it with the satisfaction of a fact that was now filed and complete. "She is staying." I looked at Corran. He looked at me. He said, "He has been right since the first morning." I said, "He showed me his drawings on the first morning." He said, "He has not shown those to anyone." I said, "I know." He said, "Why did he show you?" I said, "Because I told him drawing was work." He looked at me. "Because I said the real thing instead of the managed version." He said, "You have been saying the real thing since you arrived." I said, "I am a cartographer." He said, "That is the most consistently useful thing about being a cartographer." I said, "There are other useful things." He said, "What?" I said, "The documentation." He said, "You are going to document everything." I said, "I am going to document everything." He said, "Including me." I said, "Especially you." He said, "The jaw thing." I said, "And the 3 days early letter to the guild master, and the light going out at 2 in the morning, and this." He looked at me. "I am going to document all of it." He said, "Will you let me read it?" I said, "Some of it." He said, "Which parts?" I said, "The parts where I was right." He said, "Were you right often?" I said, "From approximately the second evening." "Yes." He said, "Earlier than I was." I said, "I am a cartographer. I pay attention." He said, "Yes." He reached across the table. He put his hand over mine again. He said, "I am glad your compass deviated." I said, "That is the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me." He said, "I mean it." I said, "I know." I turned my hand over. He held on. Outside the window, the mountain was visible in the late afternoon light, the specific angle of it, the way the shadows fell differently in every season. I had documented this. I was going to keep documenting it. For all of them. To the epilogue. Spring light 6 months later. Kit was right about the spring light. The shadows were completely different. The angle of the morning sun in the spring hit the north wall at a steeper angle than winter, and the east corner tree cast a shadow that reached the gate before the morning was an hour old, and the mountain above the compound had a quality in the spring that I had not seen in any of my previous survey documentation. I documented it extensively. Kit documented it with me. He had a new notebook. A proper guild, standard one that I had brought from the Eastern Settlement on one of my 4 trips back to the guild offices in the past 6 months. He had filled one notebook already. He was 40 pages into the second. His documentation was getting better. Not because I had taught him specific techniques. He had asked about techniques, and I had explained them, and he had taken what was useful and discarded what was not, which was the correct approach and which I had told him was the correct approach. He was developing his own method. It was a good method. The compound documentation was comprehensive now. Every building in every season, every light angle, every shadow shift, the tree in the east corner, the gate, the mountain. Corran was in there too. Kit drew him sometimes, not as a subject, as a presence. In the background of a drawing of the study window, at the gate in the early morning, at the fire in the common room. Kit drew him the way you drew things that mattered. The way you drew them to keep track of things staying the same. He drew me too now. I had noticed this. I had not said anything about it. I was going to let it be documented quietly, the way some important things needed to be. The guild survey extension was in its 3rd iteration. The Greyfen territory had, as Corran had suggested, an extensive range of under-documented approaches. He had continued to identify them. The guild had continued to approve the extensions. I was now 3 months into a survey scope that had been formally redesignated as a comprehensive territorial documentation rather than a past survey. It was going to take years. I was precise about this estimate. I was also not precise about how I felt about it. I felt, to be accurate, that years was the correct amount of time. I told Corran this on a Tuesday. Not this Tuesday. A different Tuesday. He said, "You are telling me on a Tuesday." I said, "I am aware of the symmetry." He said, "The last Tuesday in the territory," I said, "resulted in the entire survey commission." "Yes," he said, "you are saying this Tuesday is," I said, "also significant." In a different way, he looked at me. I said, "I have submitted a request to the guild for a permanent territorial assignment, rather than a commission, by commission extension." He said, "Permanent," I said, "that is the guild's designation for a multi-year standing commission." He said, "Willa." I said, "Yes." He said, "Is that the professional reason?" I said, "It is the accurate professional description." "Yes." He said, "And?" I said, "And I would like to see all of the seasons." Not as a survey subject. He looked at me. "As a home," I said it. "As a home." He was very still. He said, "You said it." I said, "I documented it first." He said, "In your notebook." I said, "Yes." He said, "The private one." I said, "Yes." He said, "When?" I said, "The 4th evening at the fire." He said, "You wrote home in the 4th evening at the fire." I said, "I wrote possible home. I am a cartographer." I was precise about the uncertainty, he said. "And now?" I said, "Probable." He held my gaze. "Very probable." He reached out. He put his hand on the side of my face. He said, "I would like to move it from probable to confirmed." I said, "That requires additional documentation." He said, "How much additional documentation?" I said, "An indefinite amount." He said, "You are going to document everything." I said, "I have been documenting everything for 6 months." He said, "I know." He said, "Are you going to let me read it?" I said, "The parts where I was right." He said, "How much of it is those parts?" I said, "Most of it." "From the 2nd evening?" He said, "I was right from the 3rd. I said, "I have you documented at the 2nd. The jaw thing was significant that evening." He said, "The jaw thing?" I said, "Yes." He almost laughed. "I documented it. From somewhere in the compound." Kit's voice, he was telling someone. Bryn probably, or possibly the compound in general. That the spring light was different and she had documented it, and he had documented it, and it was in both their notebooks now. He was 6 years old and he had been keeping track of things staying the same for over a year. Things were staying the same. Things were also, carefully and honestly and with full documentation, changing. He was keeping track of both. He was good at that. I kissed Corran in the spring light, and the mountain was behind us, and somewhere in the compound, Kit was documenting the day with the focused attention of someone who had been right about this since the first morning and knew it. He had known. He always knew. He just waited for the grown-ups to figure it out. He was very patient for a 6-year-old. He was right about most things. He was right about the spring light. He was right about her staying. He was right about home. That is the end of she wandered into the Alpha's territory by accident. He thinks she is a spy. She is just lost. If the moment Willa said I came back in 3 weeks and 2 days with the complete self-awareness of someone who knows exactly what that means. If that made you smile before it made you cry. You are exactly the person I make these stories for. More stories are on this channel. Start from story 1 if you are new. A silver coin, a dark forest, a jaw that does a thing. They always know. They always have. My name is Sansa. I will see you for the next one.